One day Albert rode his bike to his friend's house. Unfortunately, he fell off his bike on the way. Fortunately, a nice man drove by, gave him a new bike, and fixed up his cuts. Unfortunately, someone stole his bike when he was being tended to. Fortunately, his bike was such in a bad shape that his loss was not that much of a deal. Unfortunately, if Albert did not get moving soon, he'd be late for the scheduled meetup. Fortunately, a bus came and stopped for him. Unfortunately, he had no money for the bus. Fortunately, he found some money at his feet. Unfortunately, the bus driver didn't care much for him and had already left. Fortunately, the man from before saw the whole thing happen and offered Albert a ride to his friend's house. Unfortunately, the man had no sense of direction and they both ended up lost in the woods. Fortunately, Albert can use the GPS on his phone. Unfortunately, the friend called Albert before they started driving to his house and called off the meetup. Fortunately, even though he was lost in the woods, his friend decided to go hunting in absence of the meetup and found Albert and the other man on his hunting trip and helped get them back home. Unfortunately, while they were going home, the truck broke down. Fortunately, a giant bird flew down from above and carried them into the city. Unfortunately, the giant bird was shot down by a hunter, then fell. Fortunately, a vet just so happened to be standing right there. Unfortunately, he had nothing that was of medicinal use. Fortunately, Albert found a magical wand and healed the bird. Unfortunately, the wand broke and the healing magic was cancelled. Fortunately, a mage lives nearby. Unfortunately, everyone was crippled because they fell out of the sky. Fortunately, they were not because they fell into some water. Unfortunately, they were on the verge of death because they had no food to eat. Fortunately, they were able to make a campfire and eat the bird. Unfortunately, the bird's burning corpse attracted more giant birds. Fortunately, they managed to wrangle the birds and fly to safety. Unfortunately, there was a thunderstorm. Fortunately, they found shelter. Unfortunately, the shelter collapsed. Fortunately, the flock of birds had already dispersed. Unfortunately, that had been their means of transportation. Fortunately, they found someone willing to help them as they were hitchhiking. Unfortunately, that person's car broke down. Fortunately, one of them was a mechanic. Unfortunately, Albert was needed as sacrifice to fix the car. Fortunately, the cultists brigade was passing by and arrested the cult members, leaving Albert alive. Unfortunately, Albert was part of the cult. Fortunately, he has a good lawyer. Unfortunately, his lawyer was too busy fighting crime as Daredevil. Fortunately, Albert broke out of jail. Unfortunately, as soon as he broke out, he was caught by the Spanish Inquisition, who chased after him. Fortunately for him, he did not speak Spanish and unfortunately, he was taken anyways. Fortunately, Albert knows karate. Unfortunately, he was only a yellow belt. Fortunately, he could escape through an air vent in the jail cell. Unfortunately, the air vent was guarded by an evil cat. Fortunately, the cat stepped on a vent door as he approached Albert, and he fell into a cauldron along with the vent door. Unfortunately, that alerted security. Fortunately, Albert got out before security got there. Unfortunately, someone wrote Albert's name in the death note. Fortunately, he went to heaven. Unfortunately, heaven was corrupted. Fortunately, he reincarnated as Bob. Unfortunately, everyone hates Bob. Fortunately, Kite likes Bob. Unfortunately, Bob is Jack the Ripper. Fortunately, Kite is a masochist. Unfortunately, JTR has a heart attack. Fortunately, it WASNT the death note this time. Unfortunately, his condition, DIDNT, let him use his arms for life. Fortunately, he got new arms. Unfortunately, he was not an armless Gus Waters. Fortunately, he was able to pick up his life dream of becoming an artist with his new arms. Unfortunately, his art did not sell. Fortunately, he got a new job. Unfortunately, it did not pay well. Fortunately, he got pay rises. Unfortunately, He ended up traveling through a portal into the world of Harry Potter. Fortunately, he lived the Battle of Hogwarts. Unfortunately, he lost one of his limbs. Fortunately, Hagrid found him and guided him. Unfortunately, Hagrid murdered him. Fortunately, it was a mirage. Unfortunately, the pain was so real it made Bob faint. Fortunately, he got healed. Unfortunately, it did not work. Fortunately, it worked in the end.